Hello, welcome to 21 This Week. I'm Susan Heltemes filling in for Casey Aiken. Coming up next, parental rights of rapists and day 92. Will we make it to day 100? We are joined today by our panel of keen political observers, former Democratic and Republican delegate from District 17, Luiz Simmons, independent activist Robin Uncapher, former Maryland Assistant Secretary of Business Bill Askinazi, and former Democratic Majority Leader John Hurson. Now, stay tuned for these topics and more. Maryland is one of a minority of states that has not passed legislation to allow a woman who is raped and conceives a child to terminate parental rights of her assailant. Delegate Kathleen DeMay has tried for 9 times to pass such legislation, and this year it got to a conference committee composed of all men appointed by Senator Bobby Zirkin and Delegate Joe Valerio, chairs of the Senate and House Judicial Committees. The bill died in conference committee. Robin, this is wrong on so many levels. What is wrong with the Maryland legislature?
On so many levels, to put it mildly. And who is the constituency that they're worried about offending? There's nobody that I can think of who says, oh yeah, you should continue that great relationship you had with the rapist.
Well, let me make a suggestion. There's a lot of mythology about this. The bill was in a conference committee at 11 o'clock, 1 hour before sine die. The responsibility for the passage of the bill at that point was not Chairman Zirkin or Chairman Valerio. It was the desk officers. It was the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate. As John knows, an hour is a lifetime if the Speaker and the President want to move a bill. They say stop the presses, print the conference committee report. The reason the bill died was that the President of the Senate had a kind of axe grinding in for the principal sponsor of the bill who had been unhelpful on bail reform, and the President wasn't going to bring it up.
And that would be
you know
Kathleen
what?
DeMay?
If it had been a woman, this would have been a priority and not simply something to brush under the rug because they had some kind of
But my point is it
problem.
was the Speaker and the President that didn't bring it. The other thing is you have to remember, I worked on that bill for several years as a member of the House Judiciary Committee. Year after year, the bill was fatally defective with providing due process for people who were accused of having committed the acts. This year, the Maryland Judicial Conference, representing Maryland judges, once again opposed the bill. Up until very recently, the Maryland State Bar opposed the bill because it failed to include basic due process guarantees.
Well, wait a minute, I want to cut you up there. John, we only have like 10 seconds.
Well,
you were a part of leadership.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
Let me say the delegate is right. The bill was ready at the desk to go for reasons that are political only in the Senate. The President of the Senate decided not to bring it up.
That's correct.
And that is absolutely correct, and that's why it died.
Right.
That's wrong.
Of course it's wrong.
It is wrong at any level.
But it was not Chairman Zirkin and Chairman Valerio and the Washington Post and those folks who point the finger at us. It's very unfair.
We got to cut this up right here, but they were wrong, and yet another year has gone on, and I hope that they can get over this crap next year. We're going to be right back after a short break. Don't go away. As we tape this show, we are at day 92 of the Trump administration. Donald Trump had promised much for his first day and even more in the first 100. Healthcare reform, Trump's biggest applause line on the campaign trail, seems to have fizzled as Americans loudly affirm their support. It suddenly dawned on them that the Affordable Care Act, ACA, that they needed and appreciated was the same as the maligned Obamacare. Robin, what do you think is going to happen to Trump's major promise on the campaign trail?
Well, I think one of the things that happened was that everybody was promised, not that you necessarily believe him, but everybody was promised that they were going to continue the pre-existing conditions. They were going to continue allowing you to cover your child if they were on your health insurance. The closer, as they worked on that bill, the reality became obvious, which was they weren't really continuing it in the form that it's in. It was being paid for by other things, And it was pretty obvious it wasn't going to continue. And the really extreme right was saying, they didn't want all this extra. So as they kept trying to somehow make people like Ted Cruz happier, which I have to say, at least Ted Cruz has a philosophy. I mean, at least he has something to stick with.
I agree. I think it was a political mistake for Trump to come out of the box and put all of his marbles in the health care debacle. I think he should have come out with more of tax reform, maybe infrastructure bill, things that could rally the troops and have a bipartisan appeal. But to tackle an endless sea of problems first out of the box cost them political capital.
But the funny thing is they've had 7 years. They've been saying repeal and replace, repeal and replace. They've had 7 years to kind of figure this out. What would you replace it with?
But Trump said it was hard, and they just
Well,
didn't
it is
know
hard. I mean, healthcare is very complicated, as Trump has now found out. I mean, he is learning on the job, which is good. Which is a good thing. He's learning. What he's about to make another mistake, which is to try to go back and do this again, because of all of the tax cuts that he wants to make. He needs to do the health care reform first in reconciliation. And that's a problem for him. And they can't kind of get out of that box.
The other thing that was a problem was I could not believe the way politically that experienced politicians were defending this action. I mean, when you say, but people are going to lose their health care, and the response to this is what we promised to do, so that's what we're going to do. Or we're being sympathetic to the taxpayers. It was like there were so many sound bites that are going to get replayed at election time. They were
Anybody
gold.
here think it's really going to be repealed and replaced?
I think they're going to fix it. I think what's
Fix
going to
it.
happen,
Yeah.
But
eventually
repeal
they'll
and
fix
replace?
They're
it.
going to keep the best parts of it.
Right.
They'll never go back on the pre-existing condition. That's
they
going to be
can't.
part of the law. And that was a big flaw in Obamacare. I'm sorry, not Obamacare. It's going to be retained. That part's going to be retained. The trick is going to be, again, always, who pays for it?
Well, they
What
want to
strata
keep
pays for it?
continuous care, and the problem with that is that people lose their health care frequently. If they lose their jobs, they can't pay for, they can't pay high premiums. They lose their health care, and then they're stuck with, without the continuous care.
You know, it's interesting. You said something about infrastructure. I heard former Congressman Jolly from Florida say that what Trump should have done was to do infrastructure and go to Congressman John Delaney from Maryland to lead the effort, and it would have been passed. And now we have to move on. Trump constantly said he was going to build a big, beautiful wall along the southern border and that Mexico would pay for it. I should note that the BBC has reported that southern border crossings have fallen to a 17-year low. At the moment, 62% of Americans oppose the wall, and 7% of Americans feel that immigrants here now should have a path to citizenship. Luis, Americans are becoming angry that money could be spent on a wall instead of roads, bridges, schools, clean water, health, education, etc. Is this big, beautiful wall going to be built?
Well, it ain't going to be the Great Wall of China, but it's going to be built, in my opinion. And that is because, obviously, there is a energized minority in the country, millions and millions of people who did support Trump because of this. As we know, our politics today is governed by minorities who become very active in the Democratic primaries and Republican primaries. I believe that Trump is going to try to put into the spending bill, by the way, which will be part of the controversy about whether government closes or not, funding for the bill. It's going to be an extension of the existing wall, so to speak. It's obviously not going to cover those areas that there's a great expanse it won't cover, but I do think you will see a symbolic wall, because this is something that Trump feels he has to deliver to a significant part of his supporters. That doesn't mean it's a significant part of the American public or the voting public, but as is so often the case, politicians go to those energized minorities who may make a difference in the election.
It was such a political soundbite, build the wall. I mean, that...
But who's going to pay for it?
Well, I think it'll be a combination of things.
Mexico isn't going to.
Well, Mexico's not going to write a check, but there's going to be taxes or maybe import duties or things.
They've
on
got
it.
to
think you
pass the
guys are-
legislation, and
I
that's
think you
just
guys
not
are
happening.
smoking.
What do you think, John?
I don't think the wall's going to get built. I think it is going to be in the dustbin of many Trump promises. I don't think the Congress is going to go along with it, and Mexico's never going to pay for the wall.
Well, Mexico isn't gonna
let's
pay
just get
for it.
over that.
And Mitch
I mean,
McConnell
But I'm
is
willing to
not
bet you
going
that it will
Mitch
be
McConnell
built,
has
and again,
said
it's not
no.
going to be the Great Wall of China, but that is an obligation that
So
I
you
think
mean
he
a
feels
mile
he's
or
going to
two
pull.
is significant?
Well, it's going to be an extension of the rickety wall they have now.
very
But I
well
do
get
think
it. People
it's
get
more
it
symbolic, and he feels he's
well,
got to
you know what?
fulfill it.
They'll have a little extra section.
Yes,
You might be
yes.
right. A little extra section
that's
will
all
say,
I'm saying.
"We've built the wall."
But I'll
And I
tell
mean,
you,
it's a joke.
The wall,
It's a joke.
The wall was already built in large part
Yeah.
before Trump
Right.
even got into office.
Right.
So it is symbolic, and because it's symbolic, he's going to. I think he's going to push it. John, I disagree. I think the wall is
I think
going
he's
to be
going to
built.
push it. I think it'll get tied up in Congress, and they just will not do it because
they
it's
couldn't
a
get
joke,
healthcare through.
and they all know it's a joke. I mean,
Why is it a joke?
Because there's no reason to do it. They could do other things that are smarter than building a wall, which you can dig under or go over.
Look
I mean,
at the
just come on.
expression
And go
on
around
Mitch
it with the
McConnell's
internet.
face.
Come on.
When Mitch McConnell is asked about the wall, the expression on his face says it all.
It's
This
priceless.
isn't happening. No way. I'm not dealing with. Furthermore,
country
people
with,
who
you
live
know,
on the
So
border,
we're two to
they
two.
don't want
Two
they
are
don't
going to
wanna-
build it, and two aren't.
All right,
Okay,
well,
we're
leave it
going to.
there.
Well, I don't support it, but I do think they're going to build it.
Okay, so we're going to go on. Now, tax reform was the third major pillar of Trump's campaign. Noted economist Norm Ornstein of the American Enterprise Institute recently noted that it's almost a religious belief, a religious cult. Tax cuts are an elixir for everything. They are always good, and the lowest rates are best for the richest since they drive the economy. Evidence is not part of this. Now, upon further review, those on the right and the left are now questioning the legitimacy of tax breaks, and the Huffington Post has called Trump's plan, what little we know of it thus far, a big fat Trojan horse for the rich. Now, Bill, major tax reform hasn't occurred in 30 years. Is anything going to happen now?
I think things are going to happen now, and I think there's some very, very sound economic policies built in his tax plan. One, 75 million people will not have to pay any federal taxes. If you make under $25,000, not even a tax form. If you make under $50,000 for joint, not even a tax form. A lot of loopholes are going to be taken out. So that's simplicity. On the second part, he tied in very strategically foreign corporations. He's saying that there's 2.75 trillion with a T dollars that's laying in offshore accounts. To bring that money back into the U.S. and to take that money into infrastructure, he's going to levy a one-time 10% tax, it's recapture tax or whatever you want to call it. That has never been done before because a lot of corporations are incentivized because of our high taxes to keep the money offshore. I think it's a very, very brilliant stroke, and I think that's going to pass. To me, that creates jobs and it creates infrastructure. So you have two bills which are major in his platform combined into one.
Infrastructure meaning the Mexican wall. Okay, anybody else?
Yeah,
No,
and
bills
let me
and
just-
tunnels.
What do you
Roads
think,
and
Bill,
tunnels.
about the fact of the argument that we need to see his tax returns before we pass tax reform?
There's nothing, it's apples and oranges. If you're going to argue that we need to see his tax reform, what do they do with introducing a tax bill for the American
No,
people?
no, I agree with introducing. I agree that a tax reform bill or a tax reform bill should pass, but I think there's a basic question out there that people have about, well, where are his tax returns? How does this benefit him? We've got to see his tax returns.
I think-
how
In
are we going to deal with
In
that?
reality, we're talking about a multi-millionaire, richer than you and I will ever be.
He says he's a billionaire.
And you really think that he's self-interested in passing a tax bill to benefit himself?
Don't you think the
he's got so
American
much
public needs to see that in order to? I mean, I think Democrats would like to help on a tax reform bill. I think they agree with lower corporate taxes. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that Democrats can agree to on a tax reform bill, but this thing kind of stands in the
Well,
way
Robin,
of
wait
us
a minute.
agreeing
Robin,
to it.
what do you think about this?
I think that the health care bill was supposed to pay for the tax bill, and they now have a big problem. How are they going to pay for all these tax cuts? And they were in a total panic when the health care thing died. So I think that that's at least part of the reason that they're bringing this health care thing back, because they have this idea that they're going to save some money.
It gets back to the dirty word that the Democrats think it's a dirty word, but it's a good word, and it's Reaganomics.
Okay, and we know that didn't work out so well.
no,
So we're
it's
going to
not
cut
true.
this off right here now. The most interesting polling information that I could find on Donald Trump was that only 36% of Americans find Trump honest and trustworthy now, as opposed to 42% in February. This lack of honesty, or as some say, lying, has been well documented here in the U.S., combined with his erratic approach to foreign affairs, has put the world on edge. North Korea is on the verge of becoming a nuclear power, and South Korea is frustrated with America's lack of concern. Russia is becoming a bigger problem despite Trump's belief they would become our friend. Syria is becoming bolder in their genocide despite our bombing of an airstrip, and now Trump is threatening Iran. We can't forget his chastisement of our allies along the way, also, such as Canada, Mexico, Germany, Great Britain, and a variety of others. John, last night, late night comics are attempting to make us laugh, but all-out nuclear war is a possibility, and World War III could be on the horizon. Is there anything positive about Trump's foreign policy that other countries have been referred to as filled with fake news?
Well, you're on such an upper, Susan. Let me just point out some things that I think are positive that Trump is doing. I can't believe I'm saying this, but this is the way I feel. I think he is learning on the job. I mean, every meeting he's had with a foreign leader in the United States, I mean, this guy has not traveled anywhere yet, but so far, those meetings have actually gone pretty well, except for Angela Merkel, where he wouldn't shake her hand. But the other ones have actually gone pretty well. And
he's China teaching him history?
China, that, and these other meetings. I think they've kind of gone okay. That's a positive sign. I do not like the fact that he believes his best foreign policy step is to keep everybody off balance. That's not a good thing. He needs a strategy, and that we don't see what that is.
Remember just weeks ago, Russia and Trump are in bed together, and he's a communist and he subverted. That all went down the wayside. He's not.
No, it didn't.
Yes, it did.
No,
Bill,
it did
here's-
not.
Bill,
Look at
here's the
China.
Called them,
And China
he
now.
called them ahead and told them he was going to send the bomb.
Yeah.
That is not exactly.
Of course you do that.
This is all fake.
You do that to a world
Well,
power.
well, he
That's
didn't,
very
he didn't
big.
tell
here's
the
the problem.
Syrians, though. He
Here's
didn't
the
tell the
problem,
Syrians
guys.
in advance.
Here's
And
the
that-
Russians
and that's
called the
very important.
Syrians. He knew they were going to.
That can change overnight. All of a sudden, he'll be friends with Russia. That's the problem. It's erratic, and nobody knows, and people are destabilized.
Lou, what do you think?
Well, I think that if President Obama had adhered to his red line and had done what Trump did with respect to administering a tactical blow to Syria and indicating that the use of poisonous gas was not going to be tolerated, he would have been hailed and heralded by all of us.
No, because Congress wouldn't let
he
him
went
do
to
it.
Congress and Congress voted no.
Well,
Trump ignored
the president,
Congress.
The president could, and I believe under the War Powers Act,
Yes.
and it's
I
never been
agree
challenged.
with that as
The
well.
president could take the action he did. I applaud that action. It's not a strategy, as people point out, but you don't always have a strategy. You've got to let them know that if they cross certain lines, the United States is going to be there. This has not been our policy in the past. Everyone, including Democratic strategists from Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Service, have pointed out that when the president drew a line and then walked away from it, credibility did suffer. Now, we might want to pretend that it didn't, but it did.
But here's the problem. I agree with you. I thought it was a good move to make, but the problem is you've got to project some kind of thought, idea, strategy that your allies can be part of, that you can tell the American people
allies
this is our
applauded
strategy.
this, even Ms. Merkel.
Even today, I don't know what his strategy is with North Korea.
No, and
I mean, is it
That's
going
a
to be a
different- that's a
military
different issue.
attack? Is he depending on China to do
John's
this?
been in office 92 days.
No, I
President
know.
Obama had that for 8 years.
Well, let's
But he's so ignorant of the history of this country, the history of the world, that it
history
is
of alliances.
absolutely
But
terrifying.
let's remember
He
North
doesn't-
Korea-
He doesn't even know that the current head of North Korea is not the same head of North Korea that Bill Clinton was dealing with.
Right.
That's the level of
let's deal with
ignorance
the
we're in.
substance. North Korea, under President Bush and under President Clinton and under President Obama, has gotten to the point where they are threatening South Korea and Japan.
but they have
and,
nuclear bombs now.
And this is a new reality, and I think he has to approach it as we all would.
And he has
in a
the last
gingerly.
word. Now, panel, this is all going on while Donald Trump spends 20 to 25% of his time away from the White House on our taxpayers' dime, golfing and enjoying his beautiful properties that seem to boost his ego. Now, his family is cornering power in the West Wing while scoffing at conflict of interest issues, and no one in Washington seems to be investigating a Russian scandal that could put Watergate seeming insignificant regarding treason and Russia's, as well as Russia's influence in our elections, and more frightening perhaps in the White House. Let's not forget that we still have not seen his taxes, as John said earlier. What's become of our republic, guys?
You just threw a mud ball at the wall and you can see what's going to stick. Let's attack that. I mean, can't let you get away with all that. President Obama, by example, was the largest, I don't know if you saw the stats, but his wife's maid, a dresser, a chef, the girls, everybody went on vacations. More was spent personally on their family and on vacations and on security details from your tax dollars than President Trump would probably
just not
ever do.
true.
No, that's
That's
not
just
true.
not
He's
true. That is
going
true.
to match
No.
it this year.
How do you know that?
$97 million, and he is spending $3 million a weekend.
Can I make a suggestion? We as Democrats did not lose Pennsylvania and Michigan and West Virginia and a number of other
Wisconsin.
and Wisconsin because of an issue like this. Let's get real.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The issue is the economy. The issue is jobs. The issue is repatriating corporate income that is offshore because we have high tax rates. The issue is stability and security. These are the issues. And when whether he has a consistent policy, whether he's erratic, this is what all of us genuinely care about. And I think it is a little bit early. He obviously has shot himself in the foot many times when he wasn't shooting himself in the mouth. But I think you were pointing out he seems to be learning. He is basically a moderate at heart. He was never an ideological zealot. And he seems to be gravitating toward more moderate advisors.
I think that's happening. He seems to be able to learn on things that he can control. What he cannot learn, and he needs help, is how to deal with Congress. He has not figured that out yet.
And he doesn't
And-
have people around him
and he
who
doesn't-
know how.
He's learning on the job, I agree, and he's maturing. And all presidents,
He's
they
70
rise
years
into it.
old. He is a 70-year-old bigot. He is not going to suddenly become
And
anything
Robin,
other than what he
we
is.
have 20 seconds, Robin. What else would you like to say? You've sat there so quietly.
I would just say that I think the world should watch the Senate Intelligence Committee hearings because they were truly chilling and also the most riveting television
And
I've
we're
ever
going
seen
to
in my
talk
life.
about this some more as the weeks go on, especially on the weeks Casey isn't here. Back in a moment with parting shots. Now with parting shots, Lou.
The rape paternity bill we've been discussing will pass next year, and people will be shocked to learn that you can be indicted and acquitted of rape and still lose your child.
Robin.
The J5 bus from Twin Brooks to Silver Spring has been canceled. I know this sounds incredibly personal, but this is a serious problem for people who commute from Bethesda to Silver Spring. And it is the only bus that does this. I called WMATA and was told that, well, it is happening and we're going to tell you in June when it's going to happen. We're not going to publicize it or anything. So they're purposely not publicizing this to avoid any kind of
Is this in
protest
preparation
about it.
maybe for the Purple Line? I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm going to be well retired by the time the Purple Line gets
In the
going.
interim, Bill, you're next.
Hats off to the Mexican Department of the Interior. They are, we should take a page from their playbook. The Department of their Environment, I just got back from Casian, which is hundreds and hundreds of pristine acres. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And there's lagoons, protected lagoons with wildlife, you could name it. I would encourage everybody to go there. They've protected their environment on the interior despite having a thriving tourist zone to the east. They do it very compatibly, and they do it without suffocating with raising taxpayer dollars.
John.
A shout out and a shout down to Fox News for getting rid of Bill O'Reilly, but then paying him $25, $35, $45 million to leave. I mean, I'm glad they got rid of him, but the payout is embarrassing.
And how do you really feel, John? On behalf of everyone here at 21 This Week and probably all Montgomery Countyans, I want to extend Our deepest sympathy and condolences to the family of Governor Larry Hogan, who lost his father yesterday. We know he's going through a hard time, and we are thinking of you, Governor. And thank you for joining us, and be sure to follow us on social media. See you next time for Montgomery County's hardest hitting political talk show, 21 this week. I'm Susan Heltemes. Bye for now.